Hey, everybody, and welcome to Healthy Living. I'm Chef AJ, and it's my pleasure to interview tonight Lani Muelrath. She is the author of The Plant-Based Journey, a step-by-step guide to transitioning to a healthy lifestyle and achieving your ideal weight. And she's also the author of Fit Quickies, 5-minute targeted body-shaping workouts. So please welcome to the call Lani Muelrath. How you doing?
Hi, AJ. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on tonight. I'm very excited to be here.
My pleasure. This is just a wonderful, much-needed book, The Plant-Based Journey. What gave you the idea to write it?
Well, actually, this has been in the works for probably over 7 years because it has its origins in a group coaching program that I used to do where I implemented the steps that really made a difference for me in transitioning to a sustainable plant-based lifestyle, and that included the 5 steps as featured in the book and the physical activity and mindset mastery. And so actual writing was probably about 2.5 years, but that's where she was born.
Yeah. Well, you have a lot of case studies in the book, which I love, and we'll talk about my favorite one in a little bit because it's a mutual friend of ours. But speaking of plant-based journey, when you go on your website, you see this really, before and after picture of you that's like night and day. So tell us a little bit about because not all my listeners may be familiar with you, so tell us a little bit about yourself and what your plant-based journey was.
All right. And by the way, I'm really so excited to meet so many new friends tonight and have old friends on the phone, too. I know that there are a lot of familiar faces and people I'm just meeting for the first time. And it's true, just as when you pop into my website or when people meet me, they find it hard to believe that I ever had a weight problem, but I did for decades even, and even as a vegetarian. So about 43 years ago, I became a vegetarian for a variety of reasons, and yet still struggled with my weight for decades after that. It was a long struggle for me to find exactly my way to whole foods plant-based eating, which is not necessarily the same as vegetarian, and I know you know that. Mm-hmm. And so a long struggle of trying to find what worked and still trying harebrained schemes at dieting within the vegetarian realm during all those years. And finally, as all the information came forward about the difference in whole food plant-based eating, even though I was a whole grain girl going way back, in the 70s we were eating our whole grains, but we were also eating our oils and we were eating more of the processed foods. And when I really was able to connect with all of that and implement the other tools that I leverage that I talk about in the plant-based journey, it made a big difference. So about 17 years ago, that's when that before picture that's now on my website was actually about 17 or 18 years ago, already 15 pounds down from my highest weight, and I just kept moving and moving in that direction, and things just got better and better as I got better at eating and living this way.
Well, you look younger in your after picture than you do your before picture, so...
Well, these plant-based people, we have to card each other pretty soon.
We just don't age, People would be shocked at what our age really is. I want to talk about your new book, but just really briefly, I love your old book. Just, mention that because that's also a really good book for people to have. I love when you give your lectures. I always think about when you talk at Healthy Taste of Sacramento, and I love that you incorporate, you actually don't just talk about the movements, you show them. And I think about you all the time because a lot of times I'm very impatient, like you're waiting in line at the store or something, or at the, like especially the phone store. And I love the one you taught where you raise up on your calves. And every time I do that, I think about you because you taught me.
Oh, thank you. Well, I tell people they can't expect if they're going to come to one of my presentations that I'm not going to slip in some kind of physical activity. And actually, right now I'm standing because I have a standing workstation that I created at home, and this way I don't get stuck sitting. I get stuck standing and sit down on occasion if I need to. But I'm really excited to have you bring that up, AJ, about the Fit Quickies book because when I first put that book together, my idea was that you really need these 3 things. You need physical activity and mindset mastery and plant-based diet. But as it was a fitness book, it allowed me to really dive into that realm in depth. And the idea the real emerging idea from Fit Quickies is that you can get just as much benefit from intermittent bouts of exercise as you can with doing longer sustained workouts, and in some ways even more, because you re-stimulate your system, you re-stimulate your brain, which is a big important part of physical activity. So I'm standing up right now, as I told you, and I'm just doing those calf raises. Anybody at home can, do this with me. You straighten your legs and you come up on your toes and drop your heel, and you blast out brain fog and get your breathing going and start to clear your mind.
I notice that every time I go to a conference, you and JP, the two fitness people, you guys never sit, even if a front row seat is safe for you. You guys are always standing, and I do admire that.
Unless I get a place next to you, and then I'll sit.
That's great. So, well, tell us about the 5 steps that you talk about in the book.
Let me tell you, AJ, I've been so excited. She's only been out like 3 weeks now, and even then, for the last 3 months, she's been #1 hot new release on Amazon for vegetarian. And yet you don't really know until people get it in their hands. What's the response going to be? What are people going to say? Is it going to be as loved as I hope it will be? And here's the biggest initial response that I've gotten from interviewers, from people who write me, and even in the reviews up on Amazon, is how did you come up with those 5 steps? Because you've made it so accessible and inclusive, and it's like a whole new shift in how to approach. And my answer to that question is, and then I'll talk a little bit about the 5 steps, is the big difference that really sets the plant-based journey apart from all the other plant-based guides out there. And by the way, there are many of them, and they're wonderful books. My shelf is full of them. These are my resource. But the difference is that the plant-based journey is the first guide written by a teacher. And a teacher, I taught 6th grade for 20 years and college for twice as long as that, and all that's not important, but what is important is that I'm skilled and experienced in taking what could be a complex challenge or problem and figuring out how to break it down into doable, progressive chunks so that the student, which is all of us, can get traction and move forward to sustainable change. So the way I found those 5 steps was first by observing my clients and the people I've worked with over the years and then putting them into those pieces. They're universal. Everyone who sustainably lives this lifestyle goes through those 5 steps, and I just simply gave them names and gave them qualities so that people could recognize where they are and know what to do next to progress forward.
Can you tell us what they are, or do we have to buy it?
Sure. Yeah, step 1 is awakening, and that's simply somebody you talked to or something you heard or something you read gave you the idea of looking at what's on your plate in a whole different way. For some people, it's their weight and their health. For some people, it's environmental concerns. For some people, it's the lot of animals. For some, it's all of those, which was, for me, 43 years ago, those were my reasons, and they're more compelling now more than ever. Having your awakening is the single most important leg of the journey, because without it, you don't get started on it, right? If you're not inspired to change something, you don't think of something different, you don't. And it's important to stay connected with it as you move forward. Once you become awakened, and in Journey, I do go through these reasons in enough depth to give the reader the opportunity to awaken more of those ideas and do some more digging around on their own so they can make their own decision. From there, the next step
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, what was your awakening?
43 years ago, I was teaching yoga, and an offshoot of that was ahimsa, which is nonviolence. An offshoot of that is healthy body, and I also knew about our environment at the same time. So that all happened at about that time, long ago. And then, as you move forward, you keep getting more layers of awakening. And once you have your inspiration and your reason for moving forward, then you need to find out what the tools are. And I call that level scout, because a scout is someone, puts on their cap and puts on their backpack, and you go on a journey trying to find out what's on a plant-based plate, how do you set up your kitchen, all of these different things. How do you maybe structure how you're going to eat, just the basics. What tools might you need in your kitchen? And without getting really fancy, you need to get what the basics are, what should be more of on your plate and what you want to move off of your plate. Then, step 3, after you're armed with the basics, now you've got your reason, now you've got the basic tools, you move into the rookie stage. And this is where you take your turn at bat. You get to the fun part, which is eating. So you try on various ways of, putting together meals. And this is a real meaty chapter because I have put together several systems for success. I have created several recipe templates. So they're really basic ways of organizing foods that you already love into simple dishes. For example, my savory vegetables template is pick a couple vegetables, pick a seasoning cook sauce like a vegetable broth, and cook those together, and then you can serve them with a starchy vegetable or a whole grain. But you just kind of mix and match. And it's so funny, AJ, I got to tell you this. When I was first having the conversation with my publisher about the proposal for the book, and he said, these templates, this looks really good. This looks really interesting. And I said, oh, well, okay, that's just how I cook because I'm a really lazy cook.
Right.
And
well, I really like that about your book because, I think that that's how I cook too. I mean, that's why it was so hard for me to write recipes because I don't use recipes.
Yeah, and you know what? And that's why it was hard to do. I thought, I have to stop and write this down. But that's just I'm really glad you said that because that's a good example of how we have become so entrenched and at ease with how to do this, and we forget that at one point you had to really break it down into the simples. It wasn't a fancy recipe. It's just throw this and that together. And I am really excited that that's just emerged as this all-star, something as simple as that. And I've also put together just simple systems for planning a meal and connecting it with what you already know. I have a good deal of information about plantifying foods, which means take foods you already know and love and figure out how to get more plants into them. And many people like lots of dishes that are already plant-based. You know that.
Right.
I know you talk about that too. So the idea is to make a connection with where you are to where you want to go. One of my complaints with some of the plant-based guide instructions out there is this notion that you have to unlearn everything you know, or you have to forget everything you know. And as a teacher, I have to put my foot down on that because you don't unlearn anything. You learn by making connections with things that you already know and do with a new process. And that's how you make a friendly, at ease, accessible, and inclusive transition. So there you are with, rookie, you're trying it all on. Now you've gotten pretty good at fixing it at home. So the next stage is rock star. And this is where you take what maybe has become easy to do in the controlled environment of your home, and now you got to take it out onto a bigger stage. What are you going to do when you go to work? What are you going to do when you have family occasions? What are you going to do when there's a social situation? How are you going to bring the kids along? All of those things are taking something you've gotten good at on a smaller stage and taking it to a bigger stage. And then from there, the final stage, so not a final stage because then it just keeps going. I call it champion, which actually sounds like you're really at the best and you never fall down and there's just a tall order there, but that's not correct. Champion simply means that you continue practicing the tools that you've learned up to this point and keep improving your own game. You never forget about your awakening, why you're doing what you're doing. You always remain a scout, learning new recipes, new ways of doing things, learning new situations. So it's just like, think about a martial artist, someone who's very advanced in martial arts, like a black belt. And the sensei, the teacher, the lead teacher at the dojo, when he goes to the dojo to do his martial arts, what does he say? He says, I'm going to practice. He doesn't say, I'm going to perform, I'm the perfect one. It's all practice. And practice is my word for habits. I much prefer it. It's more proactive, and it's the truth. What we do now is just the things we keep practicing over and over again.
Do you think that, like, your awakening is sort of like somebody's why, or sort of like what Oprah calls the light bulb moment?
Awakening is your why. That's why you need to stay connected with it, because it's the undercurrent for everything that you're doing. It's your
right.
why.
And I use that with the people in my Ultimate Weight Loss program, losing weight. But do you think sometimes it's more important to have more than one why? The reason I'm saying that is, like, let's say somebody adopts a plant-based diet solely for the purpose of losing weight. Will they lose weight? Maybe they're not going to stay plant-based. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. Having multiple reasons just really energizes your quest. So that's the more motivations you have, because motivation on the surface, as you and I both know, it can be very fickle. You're in the mood or you're not in the mood. But if you have some kind of passionate connection, and this is why the research tells us that those people who do have a deeper connection, who do care about the environment or the animals, something outside of themselves. Maybe they're being something for their children, or being an example for their children, or bringing health to their children. This is outside of themselves, and this can have deeper roots.
I agree with you about motivation. There's a great quote by Zig Ziglar that says, motivation doesn't last, but neither does bathing. So that's one of my favorites. You have a section where you give some tips for eating at restaurants and travel. Maybe you could share some of that, because people seem to get so bent out of shape. You know, they can do really well at home, and then they have a trip coming up, or they have to go to people's houses, and that seems to derail so many people.
Yes, and it can be an individual situation, and as we all know, it's really great when you can be most in control of what you're eating, and that's why when you really do care about what's on your plate, the best thing is to have most of your times be in that way. But the reason I am another resource for that is because, well, you know me, last year we traveled to 5 countries internationally, so I didn't pack my brown rice and potatoes everywhere I went. And I've learned a few strategies, and I do go into this in depth in the plant-based journey. But when you're talking about social situations, it's very important for us to remember that when we are making a change, and I go into this a lot in the Mastery of Mindset chapter. I think it's really important as people go into this change, that as in any change, that we realize that when we start to change something, especially as fundamental as what's on our plate, that their relationships around us are going to be impacted. Any kind of shift we make, friends and family are going to sense. Whether we tell them what we're doing or try to change them, that's irrelevant. By you making a change, it's a little unsettling to the homeostasis of the relationship. Understanding that going in is tremendously helpful, because it helps us understand some of the tensions and discomforts around us changing, which may make someone else feel threatened, which has nothing to do with you and everything to do with them. So rather than, yes, I could do specific strategies about what to eat, but I think even more important is for us to find those important avenues, which I speak about in the plant-based journey, about connecting with people so that we are understanding that there's a little discrepancy and a little bit of resistance that's coming in from the change in our lifestyle. And the best way to do this is also to treat it with humor, to treat it lightly, bring food that everyone can eat, and do the best you can not to focus all the attention on you. You know, people really don't care what you're eating. It's just kind of a point of reference. We're enculturated to think, here, have this, eat more. If you don't like my food, you don't love me. And understanding that is important. Getting frustrated about it doesn't help. So if we can come in with humor, with good food, and use a few simple asides to kind of sometimes just distract the attention so everyone's not talking about this point of tension in front of you, and live by example and modeling.
Right. We've got the holidays coming up, and I see so many people's efforts, get just derailed, just starting with that little innocent piece of fun-sized candy at Halloween, going all the way through the holidays. It seems to be such a difficult time for people in general, and people that eat differently, sometimes even more difficult.
Yeah, and that's I refer to that as that sleigh ride into darkness that starts at Halloween. I know it kind of, because it can be, and this is why my strategy, and I developed this in the plant-based journey, is to look at these occasions as occasional others. So I plan for indulgences. I like my chocolate mousse cashew cream pie just as much as anyone else. But by I'm making my mind happy by saying, okay, like Christmas dinner, we're going to have such and such, and I make it specific that there are events that I'm going to celebrate around. But this has to be supported with physical activity and your tools of mindset mastery. You can't leave it to chance, because we're too easily going to default to previous behaviors, which might be that sleigh ride we were just talking about.
Yeah. That's good. You talk a lot about the key supporting players. What are they, and why are they important?
After the 5 steps are gone into in detail in the journey, I have the key supporting players chapter, and that is physical activity and the mastery of mindset. They are critical because these 3 in play, the food and the fitness and the frame of mind, were what made it possible for me to finally make that change that allowed me to sustain a healthy lifestyle, a weight loss where I also had a good relationship with food, eating, in my body. All that, I didn't just want to lose weight. I wanted to also have that good relationship with all that and be happy about it. So let me I can take those one at a time real quick. You want me to do that?
Yeah, please,
okay.
Please. I take all the time you need.
Okay. Well, the fitness, most of us, when we think of exercise, we think in terms of how it's going to help us have a stronger heart or have a stronger body, build some muscle, build some bone, reduce stress, maybe even give us a better figure. And exercise does all that. It does it all beautifully. But it buries the lead on the real benefit of physical activity, and that is what it does for your brain. As soon as you start putting one foot in front of the other, there is a biochemical cascade that is released, a hormonal cascade, if you will, in your body that then mixes with a protein in your brain called brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Now, to make that fancy term short, neurotrophic means making new nerve connections and connectors. In other words, that's how you learn new behaviors and make change in what you're doing by making new connections in your brain. So if you are a person who is, let's say your feet are stuck in cement because you're sitting most of the time, you're not getting your activity in, it's actually literally true. Your brain is stuck in cement. So when people say, I want to change, I'm just going to choose change my diet and I'll worry about exercise later. And I go, yeah, you can do that. Good luck. And second, why bypass something so simple to add in? I tell you, 3 to 5 minutes recharges your brain and starts to build this process when it makes the whole process of lifestyle change so much easier. And this is why I think it is so important, and I could not put together a book about nutritional change without putting in the very important part that physical activity plays in it. I have a metabolic profile in there so that people can assess, well, how much activity am I getting? How much am I sitting? And I re-emphasize what I talked about in Fit Quickies about small bursts of activity making a huge difference in your ability to make healthy lifestyle change. So that is huge, and that's why that is one of the key supporting players. The other that is very important is the mindset mastery.
Right, I wanted you to talk about that. Yeah, I like that a lot.
It's actually critical that and very helpful that we develop some degree of mastery over our practices of thinking. This is not just getting stronger at, yes, I can. What it is it's taking the time to step back. First, look at those obstacles to change that I started to talk about a little bit, how, when we change and then our relationships shift a little bit, and it can kind of be unsettling. So I think understanding that these changes are going to be occurring as you change what's going on with your food, first, that gets you off to a good start because now you can prepare for that. You can prepare for it by learning some kind of a mindfulness practice that is going to allow you to develop the ability to have more equanimity in the face of change. these changes come about and we get uncomfortable, we get a little bit tense, we get anxious, and then we're often running with whatever our tension reliever was before. And for many of us, it's food. It's a way to distract us from the discomforts that are going on. And you can't just expect that you're going to be able to change all that without really looking at it directly. And I also go through the specific steps of how to make micro changes. In other words, how to make little changes that are going to add up big. And that's a thread, by the way, AJ, throughout the entire manuscript, those 4 steps. I call them, it's from awareness to intention to identifying the micro changes you want to make and practicing them. I give them over and over again in terms of relationships to exercise and to food and to all of them. And that's an important part of mindset mastery or change from within. There's also some content about going from unconsciously incompetent about something to becoming unconsciously competent. In other words, when we're doing something, when we start, before we know we're not doing something right, we're not aware of it, so we don't know what we're supposed to change or how to change it. But something needs to be changed. For example, if we need to change our food. From there, you become consciously incompetent. In other words, your consciousness needs to be changed, but you're a little bit incompetent as you're learning. So that's going back into the steps. You're going into the scout stage and the rookie stage and kind of learning the tools. From there, your confidence grows until finally your skill development is such that you don't have to think about it anymore. That's unconsciously competent.
That's so interesting.
Well, it's very comforting. It takes some of I really want to take the guilt out of it, and I want to keep the inclusion in and the accessibility. So much of our responses and things we're used to doing, we think that, I just can't do this, we're not quite up to it, but understanding the stages that we go through mentally and developing some mastery of practices of thinking is really important, and how to make an intervention in that cycle of our thought and our reaction and our response, and then we just keep looping because that's what we've been doing for decades.
So you talked about different ways in the book to transition to a whole food plant-based diet, like get out the fire was one at a time, meal by meal methods. Could you talk about these different ways, and then also in your experience coaching others to eat healthier, do you find that some individuals do better with certain one of these methods, and how do you find out which method is best? So talk about what the different methods are first, and then maybe how a person can figure out which is best for them.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's an also good opportunity to bring up about the survey. I did also surveyed over 1,200 people who've made successful transition to plant-based living, and that informed the book as well as my personal experience and my personal coaching practice. And as it shakes down from all of that material, there are 3 primary ways that people make the transition, and not one size fits all. We have different temperaments. We have different ways of going about things. The real key to me is sustainability. So that's a thread throughout the plant-based journey. But as you said, the first one of the ways is get out of the fire. And this is oftentimes an awakening that comes because you have a health crisis. There are a couple of examples in the plant-based journey about serious health problems that make it important that you either make a change or you're just not going to be able to live much longer. And some people can take to that kind of a change. We all know sick people who they still don't make a change, right? They just go about, and they're not interested. There's not an awakening, even if there's some crisis point. Some people can do a step-by-step approach, and there's kind of a couple of offshoots of that. One is meal by meal, which is like change one of your meals, get good at that for a period of time, like start with breakfast, and then move into lunch and just kind of progress your plant-based plates through the day. And then there's also step-by-step. Now, this is really interesting. This is where I want to bring in one of the important results of the survey, and this is where there's a bar graph in there about I surveyed people, and one of the questions I asked in the survey was, do you think transition is best achieved overnight, making 100% change, cold turkey, as they say, or in a step-by-step fashion? And the answer in the survey, it was pretty much split even. Half the people said, over, just do it. Go do it.
Right.
And the other half the people said in incremental changes. But here's the really interesting part. That was their response, but there was always place for them to elaborate and tell me more, which is kind of like reading between the lines where I really got the juicy information. And of those people who said do it overnight, at least half of them said, well, yes, overnight, but that's what I did, but I found that it was really hard to do such and such. So for a few months I did this, and then I did this. So actually it was step by step, but in their mind, they were leaps. So this is kind of the overnight, but in chunks. So, yeah, which is perfectly all right. And so I would have to say that most people are able to deal with change, with something especially as fundamental as this, by doing incremental changes and understanding what they're doing and being prepared. And if you're going to do this overnight, you can get out of the fire. There are so many people who have been successful that way. But to sustain it, you have to be completely prepared with the steps. This does not circumvent the 5 steps. If you want to be successful, you still have to have your awakening. You still have to go to the scout level. You better get the food and you better get your kitchen ready, especially if you're changing everything you eat tomorrow. Then you need to have the rookie stage. You still got to start doing it, right? And then you're going to need to take it to a bigger stage. So this is what I mean by these steps are universal, whether you blow through them fast or whether they're gone over time.
Yeah. So I wonder if there's an assessment a person could do to figure out what is the best way for them to approach it. Because something like smoking, I mean, you have to you can't really, I guess you could cut down, but isn't it easier for
that's different because we can live without smoking, even though people giving up smoking may not feel like can. But yeah, it's a little bit, it's not really a ground leveling the playing field.
Right.
So how can you know? I think that knowing yourself, for some people, here's an example. Do you remember who Dr. Kenneth Cooper is, the father of aerobic exercise?
Yes.
Yeah, the Cooper Aerobics Clinic in Dallas. Years and years ago, he came out to the college where I'm on faculty, and he spoke to the crowd. And Dr. Cooper is he's a doctor. He has a whole aerobics clinic. He's in a white coat. He's got a stethoscope. And he got up and he talked to us all about the benefits of getting on our aerobic points and cardiovascular exercise. And after his lecture, which was very straightforward and pragmatic, then his wife stepped on. And everyone was so glad that Millie came along because she stepped up to the microphone. She was kind of flamboyantly dressed. She had this big hair. And she said, her first words just made everybody feel so much better. She said, Ken, my husband, is the kind of person where he can say, here's the problem, here's the solution, do it. I'm not like that.
Yeah.
I need a little bit of coaxing. I need a little bit of coaching along the way. I need step by step. So, see, there was a perfect contrast where these people knew their personalities, and we all know the people like Dr. Cooper, right? And these people are not probably the people that need my help. They need help in getting their kitchen ready. But in terms of making the transition, they're used to doing overnight change and living up to that challenge. Most people, if they find that they have failed with trying to make overnight change over and over again, I send them back to those 5 steps. Let's take a look. Where do we need to kind of brush up a little bit so that you can build on confidence and have that very important quality called self-efficacy, which means you're feeling that you can do something. You need the skills, and you need to be able to support yourself along the way.
I love the stories, the real stories of people and their transition that you have in the book. And my favorite is the one on page 136 because that's our mutual friend Sharon Raes. But what I really love about the story is it involved children. And in our Ultimate Weight Loss program, we have so many people doing the whole food plant-based diet, but they still can't get their family to do it. So what are your thoughts on that and Sharon's story?
Well, first, I am very grateful there are many, many personal vignettes and sharings through the book. And I'm very grateful to all of them for contributing to this message to help other people. And I'm particularly and especially thankful to the Sharon and her family and Tess and Marcy and Evan and even Dave coming along with Sharon, because they have provided such an important and valuable resource for people who are coming after them. And the thing is, in the plant-based journey, the way Sharon tells the story, it's so from the heart, so we can connect with it. She talks about her struggles. She talks about her own trying things on and not sure what she could talk to her family about, and then telling them about it, and then the kids crying, and, it's all there. It's all really messy, just like transition is in our families, in our lives. And that is such a thrilling thing to have as part of the book. Not that Sharon's family is messy, but I mean, it's connecting with real life. And what Sharon and Dave did, you see, is they did something that I'm hoping other parents will see when they read, and other families will see this. They remember they were the parents. Many of the struggles that happen in families today where people seem to be afraid of their kids, oh, my child, they don't like this, or they want me to have this. Well, who's the parent here?
Yeah, I know.
This is the struggle since forever. And as I taught sixth grade for 20 years, as I said, and I dealt with this over and over again with in different realms, like with homework and with doing projects. And it's like the parents, or they somehow don't want to bring a frown to their child's face, and they miss out the real value of parenting, which is being a parent and being a model. So that's the first thing that they did and she gives very specific points, as you saw all the way through there, about how they did that, how they parented, how they modeled behaviors. And then to have Tess and Marcy and Evan actually come in, when I asked them, I said, well, would you guys like to contribute your story? And they were so wonderfully open to that, and they shared their own thoughts. And I thought, how valuable is this to the families, not just telling the parents, but connecting to the kids?
Yeah. I just, I know that I don't have kids, and neither do you, but I still don't understand how parents can understand it. It's understand, you always say when you know better, you do better. If you really don't understand that what you're feeding your kid is toxic crap, that's one thing. But once the parent understands and no longer eats it for themselves, which I do see, but they still give in to the kids, and sometimes it's not. I'm not just talking about maybe a vegan cupcake. I'm talking about, I know people that parents themselves are vegan and they have kids, and I'm not talking about a 17-year-old that can drive. I'm talking about kids.
They can escape.
They're still feeding them cheese and maybe even McDonald's, and I don't understand how once you know this information, that you mean
like going out and buying it for them?
Right, exactly. Now I understand once a kid drives and you can't always control what they eat at school or at other people's houses, but I'm talking about these parents with young kids, and they'll say, well, they're a real picky eater. They're not picky. It's just that you fed them crap and now they don't like the other stuff. But there's no such thing as eater,
Yeah, and that's also illustrated in Susan's story in the Plant-Based Journey too, in that family chapter, just about how they struggled with the same things. The kids didn't like certain things, but you're the parent, and if you create a home environment, you can't always control what's outside the home. But even McRae's took that into account. The home environment was controlled, and maybe there were samples at the market. You're not there every day. It's going to be okay. But there's good purpose in that too, in the way that they did that, because they also gave the children some autonomy. They didn't, squeeze so hard that the kids were going to be rebellious so much. They led by example and keeping the house food supply in a certain stage and preparing really good food. That's another thing. The food has to really taste good. No matter who's transitioning anywhere, whether it's your kids, your family, the food's got to taste good. I am not a plant-based hair shirt. I don't live on twigs and bark, and I don't want anyone to think I do. So I love my food, and I think it needs to be delicious. So that's kind of all connects with them. The kid story. But that's astonishing. And it goes back to, that's a societal problem, isn't it, with families and being afraid that your kid's not going to like that you didn't let them have, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I hear this all the time, and I'm sure you do too. So, your first book was more geared towards the exercise. So I wanted to ask you why you think that it seems, at least from my experience, that it's easier to get people to do the diet than to move their body.
Do you think so?
This has been in my experience. I find like if you give people a choice to eat a delicious whole food plant-based diet or do a fitness thing, it seems for the people I work with, they'll do the food, but they just can't seem to incorporate fitness. They don't have time. They have injuries, and there seems to be so much resistance to that. At least that's
I think this might be colored by my approach, which is the incremental changes and starting by like the story I have of Sandra is in the book about. She weighed 300 pounds, and she knew she needed to exercise. She needed to change her diet, and she said, it just hurts for me to move. How am I supposed to do this? So as I describe in the plant-based journey, I asked Sandra, well, she was just sitting all the time. She was very sedentary. I said, well, can you stand? She goes, yeah. So that's where we started. We started with her standing just a few minutes at a time. And day by day, that time built until by the end of the month, she was doing 15, 20-minute walks. So this is how I do it. I think that people see the exercise thing as, I got to get in. Now I got to work out as well as eat well. I say, where in your day might you be able to make a micro change that would allow you to perhaps sit less? If that's how far you're coming from, then that's what we start. If you're already getting in exercise, once or twice a week, where can we build into your day that you're going to be able to slip in some kind of physical activity? And then we find it, and we find how to make the micro changes to get there, like putting your shoes by the front door, and you don't even have to put them on for the first week. And then maybe the second week you put your shoes on. So now you've at least developed that practice of putting on your shoes after you get home from work. And then maybe the third week, now that's a habit for you. That's a practice for you. Now we can put it into activity. And this may sound, people might think this sounds really silly and ridiculous. How's just putting my shoes by the front door or putting them on my feet going to make a difference? But that's how you build upon success. That's what a micro change is. It's taking a small step towards something that, and AJ, I've seen this over and over again with food and with fitness and even with the frame of mind training. You just start with something that is a challenge for you, but not such a big wall that you just can't climb over it.
I don't know, Lani. I put the weights out, and I still haven't used them.
Are you still in that first stage of just in there?
Yeah, but I hear you. That was my right. Now I actually have to get to the point where I pick it up. So if you could give just one piece of advice to somebody wanting to achieve success in making healthful living into a lifestyle, what advice would that be?
One thing to make the change into a lifestyle, I think it would have to be that to remember the importance of this, the mind part of the program. That we can get all fired up about a good way to eat and all fired up even about exercise, but without understanding that there are shifts that are going to need to take place on an inner level, you are not going to be well enough equipped to really make those in a sustainable way. And I keep saying that over and over again because many of us can plaster on a behavior for a while. We can try it on, but unless we have done some of the addressing of the internal resistance to change, and it's there. Whenever you make a change, there's an automatic, a little bit of discomfort because you're doing something different. Even though what you're doing may be very painful, it's what you're used to. It's a flow and a cycle of thought and behavior that you're used to, that there's going to be a little bit of discomfort that comes when you decide that that's going to change and that cycle is going to change. As a matter of fact, I will even tell people that if you're not feeling a little bit uncomfortable, then you're probably not doing it right because you're probably just doing, going to fall right back into some of the other patterns. But this is where you really up-level your game is by making those changes from within and garnering some of those tools that really leverage sustainable change.
Yeah. That is important, the sustainable part, because like you say, anybody can go on a diet or do anything for, 21 days or a month, but if it's not sustainable, they're not going to have, the long-lasting results.
Yeah.
Yeah. So would you mind talking a little bit about what your fitness routine is like and how you develop that and what, people always want to know, what do you eat? What do you, not, that's what they ask me. What do you eat?
Are you talking about the food or the fitness, or which did you want to talk about?
Like what's a day in when I know you travel a lot, you just did this wonderful safari, I believe, to Africa, but so obviously you probably couldn't make all the foods that you would make at home in your Instant Pot, but what's a day in the life of Lani Muelrath like as far as eating and exercising and,
Yeah, well, it's pretty simple. Up in the morning, I'll start with the food, as I really do love bowls of whole grains, and I even, what I really love to do is get whole oats, and I just cook them in my my rice cooker and have a big bowl of that with chopped fresh fruit and maybe a splash of plant milk and sometimes maybe a little cinnamon or flaxseed or walnuts. I really like that best, and I love some whole grain toast, sometimes with a little nut butter and a little bit of jam on it. So that's kind of my favorite standby breakfast. And then for lunch, in the summer, I'll usually have a big salad and a whole grain sandwich with tomatoes and onions and shredded carrots and, crams with vegetables. And in the winter, I'm more likely to have a big soup that I've made in my Instant Pot, with beans and grains, and then just cram a whole bunch of fresh greens in at the end so they kind of wilt. It plantifies it even more. And then dinner for me is usually a starchy vegetable and a whole grain on half the plate and a pile of savory cooked vegetables like I cook in the template in the plant-based journey, and then some beans or a little bit of tofu and some kind of sauce. I like to make different kinds of sauce and seasonings. Sometimes it's just, a vinegar sauce. It's never fancy or really rich. And then for exercise, every morning, we live up here in the woods in Northern California at about 3,000 feet, and we're lucky. Nice. Yeah, we're lucky. We're in the middle of 5 acres, so we're just surrounded by a woodland forest, pines and cedars and oaks, and behind us is a lake, so we'll get up and either take a walk or a joggle, because I don't really run. I just kind of, amble through the woods, and that's a really good way to start in the morning. And we've gotten some mountain bikes now, so most days in the afternoon or later in the morning, we're just going on a little ride along the level flume. We're not like hardcore climbers. We just like a nice flat ride. And then 3 days a week, I do Fit Quickies resistance training to keep my bones and muscles in shape and strong.
Cool. Well,
yeah, what?
I was going to say, everything you said you ate sounded good to me, so I think
yeah, I think we're happy at the table together. And I do mindset mastery practice every single day. I'll do 30 to 45 minutes before I get up out of bed in the morning. And I tell you what, it makes such a huge difference with my equanimity through the day and my strength and ability at really flourishing in a lifestyle that I love and managing all this stress. You know what it's like when you have something new come out, let alone putting it together.
Are you a meditator by any chance?
Yes. That's what I say, mindfulness practice for 30 to 45 minutes in the morning. And I really notice a difference if I ever miss it, so I really seek not to. It just makes a difference with my follow-through, and not just on the food and the fitness, but with all of life. If you can have more, I love the word equanimity, because that to me means you can live in balance with the things that are coming at with you, and not that you're an automaton that doesn't react, but that you start to practice better and better how to respond. And some days it doesn't go so well, and some days it goes better. But I can tell you that the days when I put in that time in the morning to just be still and kind of watch what's going on, that they usually go much better for me.
Well, I agree. I'm new to meditation, and I'm barely doing 20 minutes. But even with that, the days I don't do it, I can feel the difference.
It's pretty amazing, isn't it?
Somebody once told me, because I use the excuse I don't have time, and it's like you say with these micro changes that not everybody has 45 minutes, but you can do it for a minute, and once you're doing it for a minute, you're going to do it for longer than that.
Yeah,
realistically,
yeah.
And best meditation is the one you'll actually do, and so it really is. It really does make a big difference.
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah.
And, I remember reading, Dr. Ornish. He's one of the people that, in addition to the low-fat diet, also is a real proponent of that. And I remember reading his book like 20 years ago, Love and Survival, and he talked about how the benefits in his heart patients, for meditation. So
and now that's part of the approved for Medicare Ornish program. So there's some real science weight behind it. Very important.
Fantastic. If people wanted to get in touch with you, or I believe you have a blog and a website, what's the best way for them to do that, and buy your book, or maybe hear you speak? How can they find out more about you?
Yeah. Oh, and I did just send out a newsletter today. That's a really good way to stay in touch, because I do regular blog articles and do a newsletter. I try every week, and I feature the what I've written about as well as upcoming events. But there's all kinds of information and many freebies at LaniMuelrath.com. So for people who don't know how to spell my name, even though I know it's in your newsletter, it's LaniMuelrath.com. But guess what? If you get stuck on the spelling, just go to the plantbasedjourney.com. It will take you to the same place.
Oh,
that actually will take you to the place where the book is. All the information about the book and the amazing support I've gotten from those in the plant-based community with the endorsements and information there. So those will get you to the same place. And I wanted to tell you a little bit more about the gifts that are available there for everyone, and a special gift for people, too, if they just get right down to it and snap up a copy of The Plant-Based Journey. I have put together a collection of 7 sauces that did not fit into the manuscript of the book. And
nice.
Yeah, so it's called 7 Sauces That Sizzle. And this was part of the pre-order stage. It was a bonus gift if you bought multiple copies. So it's been pulled down because now we're not in pre-order, but I want to resurrect this for the fine friends of Chef AJ. That
Nice.
if you go ahead and if you go to the Plant-Based Journey, or you can go straight to Amazon and just purchase 1 copy of the book, and you can email your receipt to me at Lani@LaniMuelrath.com. And I will instantly send you that 7 sauces that put sizzle in your plant-based plate. They're all oil-free. They're all plant-based. But it's a really nice collection, and people are really loving them. So, but it has to be, something either yesterday or today, knowing this is coming up, is just grab that book, and I'll give you some sauces that sizzle and get you more informed about these steps and see if they seem like that's something that's for you. So that's a bonus gift, but I also have freebies on my site right now. And in addition to the newsletter, I created a special report. Before the book came out, AJ, those 4 steps I mentioned earlier, the awareness, intention, and identify and practice, I really wanted to get those steps out there, but the book wasn't out yet. So I created a special report, and it's called 4 Steps to Halt Creeping Weight Gain and Feel Better in Your Clothes Today. And what I've done is taken those 4 steps. This is not the 4 steps of the big journey. It's 4 steps for micro change through the course of the day. And it's about a 10-page free special report. And if you go to my website, it should pop up for you on any page. Or you can go navigate to where the blog is, and in the sidebar, you will see the 4 steps to halting creeping weight gain. You'll also see a place to download a free preview of the plant-based journey. That's also something available for free. So lots of opportunities, starting with the sauces and then some freebies if you want to just get to know each other a little bit more first. And I always answer emails. There's a contact form on my website. I'm doing my best to really connect personally with people. I really value that a lot.
Great, thank you. So you have a husband, very nice. I met him, Greg. Has he joined you in your plant-based journey, and any family?
We started. Yeah, we've been married now. This will be our 43rd wedding anniversary coming up.
Oh my!
So
wow.
I know, and the more time goes on, I think what great fortune to be compatible like this, because I've certainly gone through my changes, but we just seem to have swum along together, and it's worked out very well. But we came to this pathway together. We adopted vegetarian diet, so the only animal product left when we first came along was dairy products. So we gave up meat and fish and eggs and what are the other things? Chicken, all the animals,
Yep.
because it was part of our practice. We were coming from a yoga meditation background, so that was a natural step, and interested in our health. So that's been really nice to have that compatibility with what's on our plate for so long.
It's funny that you said that dairy went last, because usually when I'm working with people, that's what I suggest first, before other things. How do you feel about that? If you were looking back and having it to do over again, knowing what you know now.
I missed the first part of that. Doing what last?
Well, what I was saying is you said that at first you had given up everything but dairy.
Oh, I see.
And what I was saying is when I work with people and they say, well, I'm only going to make one change, that's what I usually tell people to make first. And I was saying, knowing what you know now, or maybe when you work with people, if they're only going to make one change, what would you recommend they make?
Yeah. Well, I think it's best for people to make the change that they think that they're most able to stick with initially and build on that. So it would vary, change on that. I understand where you're coming from in terms of the health problems with dairy products, and certainly we know a lot more now than I did 43 years ago. So that informs the manuscript of the book too. So that really does color the picture. But again, what I want is sustainable change. So what I want you to do is something that's going to move you. I want to look way down the road to where you want to be. What can you do today that's going to advance you in that direction in a positive way?
Excellent. So I have one more question I'd like to ask pretty much all my guests this, and it doesn't have to be somebody in the plant-based world, but it certainly could be. Who inspires you the most?
Oh, dear. I just never do well with questions like that. You mean, well, let me tell you a quality. Here's a quality that inspires me is when someone really speaks up and is not afraid of how it might reflect on them or how it might make other people think less of them, because I always think more of them. If they are willing to take a stand, it doesn't mean being rude or being obnoxious in any way. It just means stating who you are and standing by it. And that is a quality that I aspire to. And I think it's probably because for a long time it was hard for me to speak my mind. I remember struggling through high school and finding my voice, as we all do. But it just seemed to take me a little bit more time, and it's something that I keep stepping up to the plate on, is being genuine and speaking my mind, and of course learning how to do that in a way that communicates to others. So that's how I'm going to answer that.
Okay. Well, that's a good answer. Well, you must love Dr. McDougall then.
Well, sometimes he doesn't think about all the consequences. Actually, and Dr. McDougall, the way he keeps us from getting distracted. So that's what's nice about Dr. McDougall, is he just keeps reminding us it's pretty simple, really.
Yeah. It's the food. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Your book is wonderful. Yeah. Both your books are wonderful. I mean, I even though we're here to talk about the plant-based journey, don't discount Fit Quickies, because that's an excellent book as well. Once again, if you wouldn't mind saying your website so people can get in touch with you, or both websites.
Yeah, okay. It's LaniMuelrath.com or theplantbasedjourney.com. That's the easiest way to get there. And remember, pick up your sauces, grab your copy of the book, and get your free reports, and come by, sign up on my newsletter, and shoot me an email if you have questions or want follow-up.
And are you speaking anywhere in the near future?
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, I am. Actually, my second book signing's at Barnes & Noble. They heard how well it went in Sacramento the other weekend, so we're having a big, and I bring food in, see. I'm bringing food and local people are bringing in food from the book, so I'll be doing that. I'll be speaking in San Francisco in the Opera Plaza right downtown on Van Ness at the Wellness Group next week, and then I'm speaking for Compassionate Living in Sonoma, and then I'm presenting a week after next to the Tiburon, the Belvedere Library Association. These library associations, AJ, I'm sure you've done some of them too. They're great because these people are really interested in topic. They want to learn, and they know what it's all about. So, yeah, and then on through the months ahead, and I'm sure we'll run into each other. I know we're both going to be at Health Fest again. So,
that's a good one. Yep. That's a terrific one. Well, thank you so much, Lani, and congratulations on your new book, The Plant-Based Journey. I hope it continues to do well, and I hope everyone will grab their copy and get their 7 sauces with sizzle. I love that.
And AJ, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure. I could just sit down here and talk to you for 3 more hours, and I know we never run out of things to talk about, but you've been a very gracious hostess, and thank you to everyone who's on the call tonight. I appreciate it.
Right, and everyone who will be listening. A lot of people listen afterwards. Yes. A lot of times they tell me they listen while they're while they're exercising. A lot of people listen to this. They become podcasts when they exercise, which is perfect.
There you go.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Lani. I look forward to seeing you soon. And thank you, everyone, for listening to another episode of Healthy Living. I'm Chef AJ, and I make healthy taste delicious.